This year was rich on exceptionally exciting new tech. As rendering is one of our primary concerns as artists, I feel there's not enough said about new RTX 3090. RTX 3090 is of particular interest for myself and my fellow artists for obvious reasons. This GPU is so good that it went out of stock in 1.2 seconds. Well, it went out of stock because of other reasons too, but let's assume it's the one I just mentioned. Anyways, my friends at NVIDIA kindly sponsored this video and sent me one of their Founders Edition unit. Founders Edition this year is very special, and we will talk about it all. To test it out, I started a personal project, and as usual, it's quite ambitious one. Millions of high poly instances, and so far the only station I used is with this card. No other machines used at all. The project is still in development, and when I'm finished with it, I'll publish it with all the technical details for you to check out. So far, I can say that the day when one GPU is enough for high-end professional workflow is here. And there are several factors at play. VRAM, CUDA cores, 2nd gen RT cores, 3rd gen Tensor cores, and of course, cooling. Let's talk about it one by one. VRAM. VRAM was a limiting thing ever since GPU rendering became a thing. Over the years, of course, NVIDIA was introducing more and more memory, but still something as high-end as last-gen Titans were a luxury. I have two of these Titan RTX bought on our own money specifically for memory reasons. So with this generation, 24 gigs of memory were available for £2,500, which is a lot of money. Hence, why it looks like gold. And with last generation, we of course had RTX 2080 Ti's. I don't have any Founders Edition on me, but this card came for almost half the price, same performance, and unfortunately half of the memory of the Titans. Memory is important. For many years I was using Octane render engine exclusively for all the production work. Unfortunately, I had to switch our studio to Redshift last year, because Redshift manages out-of-core rendering much better, while Octane crashes all the time with particularly heavy scenes. It is still possible to render with out-of-core with Octane, but this implies performance penalty. Not only performance suffers, overall stability too. It's a deeper topic for render engines discussion, but for now let's just keep in mind that 24 gigs of video memory solves almost all these problems. Rarely your scene will fill even 20 gigs of memory. So if last generation could only offer Titans with 24 gigs of RAM, this generation offers RTX 3090 with 24 gigs of RAM for the price of the 2080. And there's more. One RTX 3090 performs as two RTX 2080 Ti's. It's possible thanks to significantly more CUDA cores, RT cores, and Tensor cores inside of this card. You will see the difference when we come to test. Now, there's been a lot of buzz regarding the design of the new card. They are big, like 3 slots big. 3080 and 3070 are more in size like these ones, but this one is very special. First, let me clarify what Founders Edition is. Historically, NVIDIA was not actually manufacturing or distributing GPUs at all. It means that they developed the technology and someone else manufactures it. NVIDIA only was selling reference design, the blueprint of some sort, and other brands like Asus, EVGA, MSI were producing their own cards using their own components, cooling solutions, and so on. This was the case up until 980 series, if I'm not mistaken. I have GTX 1080 here. 980 was looking pretty much identical. So these were the first cards where NVIDIA first manufactured and distributed their own cards, the ones they manufactured themselves. And these cards since then are called Founders Edition. These are productions of the highest standard. NVIDIA are using the best components, the best cooling solution for these, and there's a quality control to ensure the card performs at its best. Unfortunately, previous generations of Founders Edition were limited in quantity. Not as many people were buying these because they're crazy expensive, but the fact NVIDIA kindly provided me with this unit allows me to speculate that maybe Founders Edition will be something that is produced in bigger quantities. Don't quote me on that, it's just my thoughts. So what's so special about this card apart from its gigantic size? The way it's built, the way it sounds, the way it heats, and of course the way it performs. Believe it or not, this GPU doesn't heat beyond 67 degrees Celsius, and it's silent, completely silent, no sounds whatsoever. It did produce some sounds from time to time when Octane was crashing. You know, when Octane crashes, usually GPUs are spinning the fans to their max. That's probably what happens, and it sounds like toned down air alarm, you know? Do I make sense? I get it that you may not believe my words or my screen captures, but I just wish that you'll have one of these cards in the future to experience this yourself. I didn't want to take the card apart, so I did a CG breakdown of the card to show you what's different and how it's built. The PCB itself is quite unique this time. It's much smaller than usual GPU. So we have small PCB with all the components, and the rest of this gigantic card is cooling. It's all heatsinks. Fans are placed in a way that allows push-pull configuration. This design blows majority of hot air up instead of in the back of your case. You may say, but it will rise the temperatures of the CPU, and I'll reply, no, it won't. Don't worry. I've seen numerous tests in various configurations and CPU temperatures do not suffer. I would recommend the case with top exhaust option though, like the case in my recent rig that was built for 3090 specifically. I've published a comprehensive article on my website with all the components I used in the build listed in there, and I will leave the link in the video description for you. I myself tested the card with a standard air cooling solution for the CPU and AIO, which doesn't have any heatsinks, it's just flushed, almost flushed to the motherboard. And the build I have here have a push-pull configuration on the radiator on top as well, which obviously helps. Works like a charm. And I'm quite sure I can quite safely put another one in there and it will be fine. I bet you've seen quite a few benchmarking videos, so I won't go into many details in there. But I did test Titan RTX, two 2080 Ti's and RTX 3090 just to have some numbers behind my words. First, traditionally, of course, Octane bench. So Titan RTX, the most expensive card in this bunch, will be the loser. Two 2080 Ti's gives the score of 604, and RTX 3090 on its own gives the score of 607. Literally the same as two 2080 Ti's, with double the memory for the price of one 2080 Ti. Crazy. Now the fact that RTX 3090 gives you bigger score than two 2080 Ti's doesn't mean that it will render faster than two. This is why I don't really like benchmarks, because they don't tell you the true story. True story can be told by testing the card in a real professional project, and that's what I did. When I was rendering the intro to this video, I've noticed that two 2080 Ti's actually do a better job, and it will happen across the board. There will be projects when 3090 will be faster, there will be projects when multiple GPUs will be faster. It's always the case in professional work. Nonetheless, the performance of 3090 is impressive. I also did a test of one of my old scenes of the paper castle. It's crazy overcomplicated and heavy for Octane to handle. An original video in 1080p was rendered on almost over 30 GPUs. All my GPUs that I had at the time, and I used Patrick Frick's 17 GPU rig to render it out. And of course it was fully rendered out of core because it couldn't be done otherwise. What's interesting about this test is that 3090 took the least amount of time to prepare the scene. The render would start straight away if I would render from frame 0, but I was interested to start it from frame 1500. So two 2080 Ti's took ridiculous amount of time to prepare the scene. Titan RTX did a better job, and RTX 3090 did the best job. Another scenario to consider when trying to evaluate the performance of the cards. And of course, rendering with Octane or Redshift is not the only area where 3090 will dominate. Ampere architecture, RT cores, Tensor cores provided a big performance boost in applications like DaVinci Resolve and Blender. For example, Blender these days is crazy innovative. They're super flexible, they adapt to new technologies like no one else. So they have that new feature called Ray Traced Motion Blur, and motion blur, as we all know, in 3D is notorious for blown up render times. Well, not anymore. At least in Blender. What do you think about that? I heard similar performance miracles are happening in V-Ray and in Arnold, but I don't work in those, so I couldn't check myself. Blender's motion blur in cycles with optics is impressive. DaVinci Resolve tools were very fast with NVIDIA cards before and got even faster with new architecture. Things like retiming tools that allow you to slow down the footage that was not supposed to be slowed down all got even faster in 3090. I was showing a few examples in my NVIDIA Studio video of how NVIDIA cards are speeding up DaVinci AI tools, so go check that out. But what's worth pointing out is that 8K with this card is not a pain. There's enough memory for 8K proxyless workflow, even with heavy processing nodes on top of the footage, like motion blur, for example. Overall, this card is the best card money can buy if you are a cinematographer working with the biggest resolution in the world. This card will handle it straight out of the box. Speaking of NVIDIA Studio, their drivers really does help to optimize the performance of your card. Think about it like Apple. With their products, they optimize the software to hardware. To finally summarize why RTX 3090 is a game changer, let's roll back to price, performance we're getting, and maintenance. Oh wait. There's no maintenance. The cooling in this card is so good that it's pure plug-and-play power without any complicated water loops necessary. Oh, and the last thing, NVLink. You can stack two of these cards, put NVLink in, and have 48 gigs of memory. You would literally have the performance of 4 2080 Ti's with 48 gigabytes of video memory. It enables you to deliver world-class media content faster. Just a couple of years ago, you would need to invest substantially more into multiple workstations to do the same work at the same speed. And I was obviously one of those who did invest. Does it sting now to realize that such performance is available for much cheaper? A little bit. But I love the journey, and it's super exciting to understand that this is now available for such a price. And I'm super excited to see what lies ahead in the tech world. So I hope this video is at least a little bit helpful, because I've seen so many forum threads where people try to decide if they need to water cool their RTX 3090, and then people trying to decide should they go with 3090 or better invest in two 2080 Ti's. Of course, go with 3090. They will be available eventually, and I wish you best of luck. Happy rendering, gentlemen. I'll see you soon. Peace.